This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's visit to Uttarakhand and launch of various development projects in the state. The participants are Aarti Tikoo, political analyst, and Anubha Rohtagi, anchor.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid a day-long visit to Uttarakhand today, where his schedule included inauguration of various development projects. To discuss more about the PM's visit and its significance, I'm now joined by political analyst Aarti Tikoo. Ms. Tikoo, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Anubha.
Ms. Tikoo, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was on a one-day visit to the Kumayu region of Uttarakhand today. This is his second visit to the state in a year. In this background, how significant is the PM's visit?
To begin with, Prime Minister's visit to any of the states within the country or any foreign trip is always significant. It has a symbolic value. It has certainly, in the present context, it has a lot of developmental significance. There's also the significance that Prime Minister has brought into focus about the civilizational and cultural heritage that he has tried to promote, restore, and also try to rebuild with a certain aim and objective that India under Prime Minister Modi is an India that is acutely aware of its identity. It's acutely aware of its civilizational past. It's also trying to bring this awareness among the people for a very long time. Had, you can say, a certain section of people in the country totally deracinated and also colonized in a way that we did not think about our culture and heritage for a very long time. And even if we did, but the narrative has been such that a lot of people across India, in fact, felt hesitant and also perhaps embarrassed to embrace their heritage. And that's what Prime Minister Modi's visit in Uttarakhand, I think, has changed in the last few years, including the visit that he is undertaking right now. Because if you remember, that Prime Minister Modi has been visiting Uttarakhand's religious spots. And even today, we saw Prime Minister Modi's pictures and videos coming out of Uttarakhand. He is worshipping, overlooking the beautiful mountains in Uttarakhand. And also the fact that Prime Minister Modi has this saintly kind of image that he has built, or he prefers it himself. And we have seen this showcasing of this image, especially in Uttarakhand. That is one aspect of his visit. Second, of course, I think, is the fact that 4,200 crore worth developmental projects. That also indicates that Prime Minister Modi has a special interest in this particular state, the kind of focus, the kind of development that he has brought to Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand, as we know, is a new, compared to all other states in India, is a new state. And we have seen Uttarakhand's political landscape has been very unstable and destabilized because of frequent changes in the government. But with the kind of investment Prime Minister is bringing into the state, it's clear that he wants to have his party's strong foothold in this particular region. And third, I think, is this also the kind of images that have come out today goes to show that Prime Minister is also readying his own political party, BJP, for the upcoming elections, which are due next year. Also, the fact that Prime Minister Modi does back Uttarakhand's Chief Minister, Damiji. So I think on the whole, I would say that there is a lot of political meaning here. That is, of course, the economic angle, and then, of course, this civilizational, cultural angle to his visit.
You mentioned, of course, the fact that the Prime Minister began his visit today by, with offering prayers and performing rites at various religious places, including Parvati Kund and Adi Kailash. Now, his last visit to Uttarakhand in 2022 also included darshan at Kedarnath and Badrinath. What kind of a message do you think the Prime Minister is sending across with these visits to religious places?
This gesture is certainly targeting a whole lot of people across the country. And he is invoking, one, of course, his own religious beliefs. He's also invoking his cultural identity. He's also, in a way, boosting the image that he has across the country and even across the world, that he's not hesitant, he's not afraid of embracing his religious and cultural identity. And in a way, he is connecting with his, not just the vote bank, not just the constituency he represents, but also the larger national character that has emerged in the last decade, that people are now unafraid or not embarrassed to accept that their identity is rooted in the Hinduness, or it's rooted in the religio-cultural identity of which is essentially Hinduism. So I think overall the messaging clearly is that he represents this new India where people are unafraid of calling themselves as people of Bharat and not just India. And as we know, he has repeatedly emphasized on the fact that India is not just a very, very old civilization. And that, I think, is the message of what he is doing today by visiting all the temples and by openly sort of showing off his identity.
You also mentioned the fact that the Prime Minister inaugurated or dedicated to the nation or laid the foundation stone of development projects worth 4,200 crore rupees today in the Pithoragarh region. Now, these projects included roads and bridges in the rural areas. There was construction of poly houses and hospitals, among many others. Now, Uttarakhand saw monsoon fury just 2 months ago, and it is a recurring thing in this Himalayan state. In this context, how significant are these projects that the Prime Minister inaugurated today? Because he did say in his address to the people in Uttarakhand, in Pithoragarh, that Uttarakhand's progress and well-being of its citizens are at the core of his government's mission.
Well, absolutely. That's what I was saying earlier, that he is invested in this Himalayan state. One, we know that BJP is ruling the state at the moment. And we also know that Uttarakhand has a very tumultuous political landscape in the last 2 decades. There have been frequent changes in the government. And one of the biggest factors for that frequent changes in the government have been political instability. And that's what Prime Minister perhaps is focusing on. He would like to see political stability. He would like to showcase that the BJP is capable of running a full term, and also facilities, providing development, providing avenues for the Himalayan state, where in fact the state hugely is dependent on tourism. It's hugely dependent. Its revenue generation comes mostly from tourism. So Prime Minister is invested in the state. I think he would like to demonstrate that BJP can run a full term in Uttarakhand, and he would also like to showcase that BJP is capable of bringing development in the Himalayan state. That, I think, will also ensure that BJP repeatedly comes back to power in the state. That will, of course, also ensure that the current Dhami government is strengthened in the state. I think that is clearly one of the objectives.
It's not just that the BJP, the Prime Minister is particularly targeting the BJP government, or he's, talking about the achievements of the BJP government in the state. It's the kind of projects that have been inaugurated today also are a necessity for a state like Uttarakhand.
Yes, and as I said, that Uttarakhand largely relies on tourism revenue, and for tourists to come to Uttarakhand, Prime Minister clearly does understand and is invested in developmental projects, in infrastructure projects to attract tourists. And I think with or without the BJP government in Uttarakhand, he would have invested in the state to attract tourists across the country. That has been, in fact, Prime Minister Modi's USP, regardless of who is in power in different states and union territories of India. He is invested in areas or you can say that he's invested in areas knowing that this would be in the larger interests of the country, larger interests of the states.
And what you were just saying also was reflected in the Prime Minister's speech today. He said we have started developing border villages, not as the last, but the first villages of the country, because he said that, border areas have been neglected for quite a while now, and the focus is now on developing border areas and developing the border villages as the first villages of the country.
Absolutely. The amount of investment that has gone into Northeast states, the amount of investment that has gone into work in Ladakh, for example, Ladakh Union Territory, also Jammu and Kashmir. I think overall, if you really look at his entire, 2 terms, the second term, of course, will be completed later next year. But if you look at the last 10 years, Prime Minister Modi's agenda has been throughout in these last 2 terms has been development, sabka saath, sabka vikas. He is clearly focused on putting India on the global map as not just as an aspiring superpower, but as a country which is capable of, one, competing with other developing countries, which is capable of competing with China, competing with other countries which started around the same time when India started as an independent republic. So that, I think, has been his USP, that has been his mantra throughout these 2 terms. And therefore, it's not a surprise that, the kind of investment he's bringing, 4,200 crore rupees to Uttarakhand, it's not a surprise at all. He has been interested and invested in all-round development of the country.
We have seen that the Prime Minister makes it a point to regularly interact with the security forces. In this visit also, he interacted with the personnel of Indo-Tibetan Border Police and the personnel of Border Road Organization, which, although is not a security organization, but it plays an important role in maintaining communication links in this hilly state. How important are these interactions of the Prime Minister to boost the morale of these personnel?
Well, once again, Prime Minister's overall image is that will reach out to the last man in the country. He reaches out to not just security forces, but also not just defense forces, but also paramilitary. And that is why even if, ITBP does not actually appear much in media, he ensures that organizations and paramilitary like ITBP do get their due in the public discourse. That's why he reaches out to even, you will see that he will go and shake hands with ITBP soldiers. He'll go and talk to even police in different states. So this is not something that should be surprising. But in Uttarakhand, I think it sends a lot of messages. As we know, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, this is a different organization, in fact, very different from the armed forces. ITBP is very critical for the states which do share border with, earlier was known as Tibet and now is known as China. So this is probably also a signaling to China. There can be multiple meanings to it at a geopolitical level. And I'm sure analysts will infer such meanings from this meeting.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Ms. Tikoo.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's visit to Uttarakhand and launch of various development projects in the state. The participants were Aarti Tikoo, political analyst, and Anubha Rohtagi, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
ये है आकाशवाणी और आप सुन रहे हैं गोल्ड 100.1 पर।